everyone, good morning. Welcome to the first session of the day with the Retrofit stage. Today we're talking about the local authority delivery retrofit schemes, and we've got some retrofit heroes here who've been on the ground delivering amazing schemes across the UK. Just for some of you might not be familiar with some of the acronyms that come up in this session, so 3 ones I'm just going to cover. LAD, Local Authority Delivery Scheme, exactly here. Lots of you know that already. HUG, Home Upgrade Grant. This is just mainly for those homes which are off-gas properties. And then SWC, you might see that a lot. That's a Sustainable Warmth Competition, which is what's currently being delivered at the moment with a few of those grant funding programmes. So what you're going to hear today is from those practitioners who are delivering large-scale local authority-led retrofit schemes. We're going to start off with Antonia, Craze and Katherine Shadwell from Portsmouth City Council and Agility Eco. Following that, we'll hear from Hannah Smith, who comes from the Kensington and Chelsea Council about their project for Lancaster West. And then finally, we're hearing from Leigh Fairbrother as well from QBOP, who's got lots of experience of different projects across the UK with their solution. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to this team.
Brilliant, thank you. We will be using some of those acronyms, so thank you for clarifying those. We are here to talk to you today about one of our successful retrofit projects, but just quickly wanted to introduce ourselves. I'm Antonia, I'm a Senior Energy Officer at Portsmouth City Council, and today with me I have Katherine Shadwell, who is at Agility Eco, and we have worked with them on multiple retrofit projects over the years. The Warmer Home programme is delivered by Portsmouth City Council, leading a consortium of local authority partners. This consortium is now 22 strong, starting from about 11 in 2018. So we are constantly adding to this consortium to make sure that we can channel available funding to as many homes as possible across the southeast. The Warmer Homes programme has been, thankfully, quite successful. One of the projects that we are most proud of is our recent LAD and HUG funded project. To date, we've secured £49.8 million through the 2 funding streams, and we have delivered measures in over 2,700 households. So that's over 3,300 installation, solar panels and air source heat pumps in low-income homes, resulting in lifetime bill savings of over £11.1 million. But every project is not without its challenges, and we have had to face some and overcome them. One of the key challenges that we faced was purely from the funding itself. The funding allows only for short delivery timescales of up to about 18 months, and that does include the mobilisation period, which really cuts into the time to deliver such complex measures in complex homes. Funding is also only made available with little notice and over short timescales, which makes it difficult for the programme to plan for the future, as we have to be very reactive to the funding that does come through. And then extensions to the funding, which have been needed to complete delivery, they have been awarded often with little notice, which becomes an issue when we've already started slowing down the installation process and stopping taking applications in, and we have to restart that. So that's stop-start to the funding. Challenges installers where they might have committed their resources elsewhere as they didn't think the funding was going to continue to be available. Yes.
Oh, you can hear me now. Wonderful. So the other challenges that we have has been around the supply chain and installer availability and training opportunities. So one of the ways in which we've been trying to support installers across the south is by offering them training opportunities. So one of those is using an MCS umbrella scheme. So the one that we're using in particular at the moment is through Alto Energy, called their Alto Assured program. Essentially what it is it provides the installers, so they targeting experienced heating installers, typically installers that have been installing gas boilers and gas central heating systems at the moment, haven't quite yet diversified into heat pumps, so they offer them free of charge heat pump installation training, and then they also support them with the design, supply, technical support, commissioning, paperwork and MCS certification for the heat pump as well. So they really help them through the whole process For us, it's been beneficial. It leaves the resident with an MCS compliant heat pump. It also helps the installer to train up into installing heat pumps in the first place, and therefore they then look to get their own MCS certification going forward. It just helps them sort of break into that heat pump space a little bit more.
And then one final challenge that we're going to cover is the data that we had available and then how we used it to get referrals and applications through to the schemes. So we initially went with the approach of getting as many applications as we possibly can, and we used EPC data and fuel poverty statistics to achieve this. We letter dropped thousands of homes, which resulted in hundreds of applications that were not eligible due to suitability or the person inside the home not being eligible with the income caps that there is with the funding. EPC data has just proved itself to not be nuanced enough to really be able to target the properties that we wanted to reach. This disrupted the customer journey, resulted in disappointment for those who applied thinking they could get free installation but were not eligible. But it also wasted staff time processing these applications and then installer time surveying properties that were not eligible that could have been spent surveying properties that were eligible.
So hopefully this still works. We've had, so despite all of the challenges that we've just gone through, we have had quite a few successes within the programme since we started LAD 1, quite a few years ago now. I actually forget when we first started. So one of those has been when we talked about data targeting, the challenges around that. We've been trying to overcome that by improving how we use data targeting. And one of those is through working with a company called Absolar. They're an arm's length company from the University of Southampton. So they're in the area that our consortium covers. And they have a tool called CAPT, which is the Carbon Action Planning Tool. So sorry for another acronym. And basically it uses a variety of data, so LiDAR data, GIS, EPC data, also Experian data as well, and we've been able to tailor it to fit the eligibility of the LAD and HUG programs. So we use this tool to firstly target properties for mail-outs. It's helped us to really target properties a lot better, and also we use it for the assessments, the initial assessment of the property. So an example here is an air source heat pump assessment. So we've got, this is a property that's highlighted in blue there. So this is assessing it for the suitability of an air source heat pump, and it takes into account all the different considerations that we have to think about. So the line of sight, also noise considerations, and recommendations for that. So those areas that you can see highlighted in green on the edge of the property, that's where it said that the air source heat pump is suitable for install. We wouldn't be able to install it in these other areas. So it just gives a bit of a flavour of what happens when we assess an individual property. And then in terms of some of the other successes, we have been doing a lot to improve the customer journey throughout the programme. One of those ways is through developing a welcome pack. So this is a bespoke welcome pack that we've made ourselves. Took quite a while, but we're quite proud of it, I think. And so the welcome pack includes things like background to the funding, so the resident knows where the funding is coming from. We get a lot of questions about the funding, the acronyms, what it means. And then also a next steps guide. So it talks through what's coming up next in the programme for them, so they know what to expect. And then at the end, we also have frequently asked questions and key contacts for the residents, so they know who they can call or email if they want an update about their application. And then lastly, we'll go on to talking about the branding as well. In terms of the Warmer Homes brand, we've developed that from the very beginning, and we use it consistently throughout the programme. So rather than using the LAD and HUG acronyms with residents directly, we use the Warmer Homes branding. And we have a website. We've created general explainer videos that explain about how the scheme works. But also more individual measure explainer videos. We get a lot of questions from residents asking about how a measure works, particularly heat pump, how solid wall insulation works, how internal wall insulation works. So we've created explainer videos that goes through the measure itself, and they're available on the website for residents to have a look at. And we also signpost them to that in the welcome pack as well. So lastly, I think we've got, hopefully we're okay on time. So we've got a little case study at the end. So this is Fred. Fred is in Chichester District Council area, which is in West Sussex. And he had a air source heat pump funded through the Warmer Homes programme. And he had, before the install, his EPC was rated E. He had old electric storage heaters in his property, so he was off gas. And since he's had the heat pump installed, he said that his energy bills have gone down by about 50%, and his EPC has also increased to a C as well, which is really good. And I hope we've got time just for a quick video.
My energy consumption's definitely gone down. I've got a smart meter, so I could see what I was using, and I can see what I'm using now. I'm possibly gone down by about 50%, I would say, so I'm very happy. I also discovered recently that there's an app I can use on my phone, so I can actually set the temperature even when I'm away from home. One of the concerns I did have with an air source heat pump was noise. I've heard people say they can create a lot of noise and neighbours aren't happy. I'm pleased to say mine comes on for about 10 minutes a day, and that provides the hot water for the day, and I don't notice the noise. Certainly no neighbours have complained. So to sum up, I'm really happy with the air source heat pump, and for people thinking about getting one, I would say obviously it's green, it's good for the environment. I would say it saves money. The noise is not an issue and just easy to use. The other concern obviously are they going to be warm enough, and the heating, as far as I'm concerned, has been perfect. Energy.
Oh. It's about to start again. So thank you very much. I'm sorry that was a flying visit, but do feel free to ask us any questions afterwards as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Just before we start with Hannah as well, any burning questions you have, we'll say that we'll have a bit of a panel discussion and we'll take questions at the end as well. Thank you.
Right. Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm the Sustainability Programme Manager for Lancaster West Neighbourhood Team. We're a part of the Kensington and Chelsea Housing Management Department based up in the north of the borough. You may be familiar with Lancaster West, so it's the estate where Grenfell Tower is based on. And our team was set up in 2018 following the Grenfell tragedy to take over the management of the estate, but also to deliver on government commitments to refurbish every home on the estate and transform it into a model 21st century housing estate. There's 795 properties that are part of that refurbishment programme, manage 826 altogether, but the remaining 30 of those are new build. So obviously a lot smaller scale than this programme that we spoke about. In terms of what those properties are like, majority of them are EPC D, some lower, some higher. It's quite a range of stock, even in that quite small space. So some of them are kind of 1930s solid wall sash windows. Some of them 1970s like flats, some houses. So a real mix. 25% leaseholders, which has its own challenges. And there's also kind of quite high levels of deprivation on the estate. 5% of households have one person who can't speak or read English, and 10% of homes there's some sort of accessibility issue. So quite a lot of kind of social and environmental challenges that we've got to face on the estate and that we're working around as part of this retrofit programme. In terms of vision, so our goal is to help Lancaster become a model 21st century housing estate. We co-designed a sustainability strategy with residents, and this has got the central aim of also becoming net zero carbon by 2030. And so we're now moving in kind of the co-design and delivery of the refurbishment programme, which Retrofit is at the heart of that. And another really key aspect is the development of a low-carbon heat network, which is going to provide all heating, hot water to every home on the estate and eventually be kind of expanded beyond. I think everyone's probably well aware that funding is quite a key challenge when it comes to retrofit. It's not cheap, but it's something that's important. So it's a lot of work that we've been doing is trying to look at alternative funding sources. So we've been fortunate enough to get some funding through various grant funds listed here. So some UK government, some Mayor of London, some actual EU as well. And we're also looking at alternative funding sources like preferential loans. So we've been having some conversations with the UK Infrastructure Bank, I think UKIB, and also the Mayor's Energy Efficiency Fund, which are some alternative funding sources for those. So largely wanted to spend this time focusing on kind of what we've done so far and what some of the really key lessons that we've learned throughout the process have been. So next few slides are going to go through mainly those. First one is co-design. So obviously it's really important in the context, the area that we're working in, that we are co-designing all these changes with residents. But I think that it is also important kind of in every context. On the right, the poster there is some top 10 prioritisation workshops that we did with residents of each block back in 2019 now. In most blocks, windows were right at the top of that list, so that showed us really clearly that before we even went near like an infrared camera or anything like that, that's where most heat was being lost, and that was where there was the most urgent need for investment in order to improve homes, improve energy efficiency. I think ultimately, like, residents are going to know their homes better than any of us. So while we are doing surveys and have design teams working with us, that co-design kind of aspect is really important. But would say it does take time, does take a lot of resource, but has been really essential part of this process for us. Next part is taking every opportunity to decarbonise and piloting approaches. So every kind of retrofit programme that you have to do at scale, I think having some pilot properties and piloting approaches, different materials is very helpful, because ultimately if you're ordering hundreds of windows and they aren't well suited, residents don't like them, don't work, then that's a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted time, resource. So what we've done is where properties have become empty, where people have moved out, before reletting those, we've been trialling things like windows, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, different types of smart thermostats to kind of see what the best approach for these are. So we're both doing kind of external fabric improvements, but also more internal sort of stuff that can also make differences, like LED lighting, energy efficient appliances, MVHR, smart thermostats, and on average, before even touching like the windows or wall insulation, those have improved our EPC points by an average of 8 points. So it does, every little makes a difference. Next one is around, I think, adapting and being flexible. So as I said, even kind of on that small scale, we've got lots of different types of buildings, lots of different archetypes. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. So I think going back to that piloting thing, trying out different approaches, different materials, and doing lots of detailed surveys have been really helpful for us to make sure that we've got the best understanding possible of the buildings and the best understanding of the things which are going to work for each of them. I think, so we've been following the PAS 2035 process. So we've been doing like dwelling assessments, things like air tightness testing, and doing as much fit in house as possible to really help build that understanding. And longer term also, that will help us reduce performance gaps and also help with future maintenance, thinking kind of beyond the retrofit programme as well. Next one, maximising the opportunity to layer additional benefits. So the picture on the left here is a bio-solar roof that we've delivered on one of our blocks and are looking to do on as many blocks as is feasible. So where we've been delivering roof insulation, we've also been looking at the feasibility of having green roofs on top and installing solar panels. So that will help to deliver renewable energy to power both electricity and heat within the homes through via air source heat pumps. Green roofs can also help to absorb carbon, make the solar PV more efficient, and obviously has good biodiversity benefits as well. So looking at where there are opportunities to do more than one thing at a time. I think other areas where we've been able to do this well was looking at things like safety and accessibility. So where you can do one thing, like one sort of door, for example, which is going to have benefits across the board for all of those. And then supply chain issues, again, I think is something that everyone in the sector is facing. So lots of delays, lots of cost inflation. We've been delivering various grant-funded schemes, so like SHDF, for example, and between the time of applying for that funding and actually getting around to delivery, the cost of things have skyrocketed, in some cases probably more than doubled. So some of that you can mitigate, some of it you can't. You just have to keep looking for additional funding. But what we've been doing is planning for supply chain issues, so building in contingency where we expect there might be that inflation, and building in time within our timelines to help to minimise disruption to the project as much as possible. Also try to build a diverse pool of contractors, so having conversations with different contractors, suppliers, and also investing in them, so both for our in-house team to help to develop those skills, but also contractors that we're working with. So through some of the pilot work that we've done, we've supported a few contractors to get both PAS 2030 and Trustmark certification, which is going to help build capacity in the supply chain, but also helps us to get this work done where it is ultimately quite difficult to find some of those contractors at the moment due to those kind of supply chain capacity issues. And then I think final one leading on from that is also developing skills and knowledge of the team in-house to help to develop those green skills. So that's both kind of in the actual delivery side of things, but also design coordination. So we've got 7 people that have now within the team have completed their retrofit coordinator training. We have been working with Build Test Solutions, who I think are just there, who are great, who have taught loads of us how to do airtightness testing. So we can do that in-house, makes it a lot more flexible, and again helps to build that understanding of the buildings that we're working within. And then on the delivery side, so we have an in-house team of operatives that do kind of refurbishment and repairs work. So as much as possible, kind of been building their knowledge and capacity so that they have the confidence to install bits of work, but also once stuff is installed, thinking about things like MVHR, that we're able to kind of maintain that and keep that going in-house. So yeah, green skills, I think being flexible and building that capacity in-house as much as possible were some of our real key learnings. But I think that's all from me.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it through the snow. I'm Leigh Fairbrother from Qbots. That's one of our 7th generation underfloor installation installing robots, and I'm going to speak a little bit about the perspective of the LAD schemes and the other funded projects from a delivery perspective, from a contractor. I've been working on energy efficiency projects with social housing providers for about the last decade or so, and I have to say the activity and the emphasis that has come in the last few years has been some of the most exciting. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of project overview. We've worked on many and are working on many. Some of the structures and the complexities that have brought up the challenges that we face. Importantly, I think, look at the impacts, what has been achieved and the successes in that, and then what we've learnt and we can take forward onto future projects. As you know, we're all anticipating social housing decarbonisation fund announcements very soon and lots more activity in the market. So I tried to put the data into something that would communicate a lot. So this is a timeline over the last 27 months from our first LADS funded install in December 2020 right through to the end of last month. It shows the different projects, funding streams, how they crossed over through extensions, how they fluctuate with deadlines, some of them moving, some of them being more imperative, how compliance framework changes can impact delivery, and it just really tries to paint a picture of how challenging it can be to be working in different compliance frameworks on different projects with different timelines with different clients all at the same time. And this obviously represents these strands of work and excludes everything that's happening with Green Home Grant voucher schemes, eco, SHDF at the same time. So huge complexity, but really interesting dynamic between the different projects and the different clients. So within that, we've played various different roles as an installer. We've been installing a single measure. We've done that under 2 compliance frameworks, PAS 2030, 2019 and 2017. We've acted as retrofit coordinator, retrofit assessor where needed, because the project structure dictated it, especially when there was compliance changes within the timeline of a single project, and therefore it wasn't baked in from the original. We've worked on managing agent-led projects, as well as local authority-led projects, and we've been procured in a number of different ways. So all of those and the various different strands has meant multiple kind of routes of procurement, multiple stakeholders, lots of different parties to deal with and to manage. By far the biggest project, and the one that as a big case study, is where we've been working with the Greater South East Energy Hub, with the London boroughs, led in the bid by Tanya Jennings and Ealing, and then delivered through Warmworks. And through that, we've surveyed over 600 homes in the London and the South East region, found hundreds suitable for install, and completed a significant number of those already. Obviously, like many of the other sustainable warmth competition-funded projects, that is now being extended for a further 6 months. So that project delivery will continue and obviously cross over into other funding streams, creating some tension around supply chain, which the other speakers have mentioned. From the supply chain perspective, we're the same supply chain, whether we're dealing with social housing decarbonisation or LADs or able to pay market, being dragged in multiple directions at once. So the challenges that we've seen, and this echoes what some of the other speakers have talked about, is obviously resident engagement. I think many of you that have been involved in these projects appreciate that the amount that you can proportion to engagement, that kind of admin management side of the project, is minimal, and that makes it really challenging to be able to engage. Because I should mention, I think there's a note on the other side, about a third of the work we've done has been with social housing owned properties, and about 2/3 done with those that are eligible for the schemes through other measures. And it's that eligibility and suitability that has come up time and time again through the recruitment process as presenting a challenge. Is the person in the property eligible? Is the property itself suitable? Does it meet the physical characteristics? Can it be installed in a compliant way? And that's presented many challenges managing resource, both in terms of the times and the deadlines, but also managing the compliance, the knowledge in-house, both from an installer perspective, but also from a client perspective. There's a huge uptick in learning between PAS 2017 and PAS 2019 in November of 2021. And that involved also helping to inform, educate, and help residents understand the requirements for their homes, what they need to do to be able to access funding. So where we were working in the low-income homeowner market, you might have to do enabling works of several £1,000s of ventilation in order to be able to be eligible for insulation or other measures. And that's a real challenge. Going into somebody's home and saying, yes, we can make your home warmer, however, I've got to first put some more holes in it. So there's a real challenge about understanding how that ventilation works, the benefits of it, and communicating that and taking that initial reaction and developing that. But I'm glad to say that, although we faced those challenges, we were able to overcome them in many, many cases. One of the big learnings or challenges around data, I know that you mentioned it as well. EPC data isn't as consistent as we would like it to be. And lots of social housing providers hold data on their properties, but it doesn't include all of the data points that you would ideally need it to. So we've developed a machine learning algorithm to help with that, to help identify measures and properties that may be suitable to inform that process and make it more effective. And where we've been able to deploy that, we've seen much higher success rates. So in impact terms, we've been able to insulate homes, saving on average about £250 a year for the residents, improving SAT points, anything ranging from 2 to 12 points in a property, and increasing the U value, because we're stopping that cold air coming in. On a cost per sat point improvement, our measures have come out really competitive against some of the higher item prices. And the savings relative to the other potential measures with a higher capital cost have been really impressive. EPC improvements have averaged for our measure about 4.8 points over a large case study of properties. And that varies obviously by individual project and characteristics of the buildings, but where we see lots of privately owned homes with larger floor areas, then you can expect to get a better performance. And therefore the payback period to the end user in energy saving terms reduces every time. That's obviously been influenced by, during the same period, we've had enormous energy price inflation as well. So not only has these projects and funding streams been very timely, they've been necessary to offset some of the impact of what's been happening. So I wanted to then try and put that data into context for the projects combined. So we know that installing our measure has an embedded carbon from the parts involved in robots, from the transport, from the carbon in the material, from getting it to site, of just under 800 kilos of CO2 equivalent per property. But it will then save, on average, about 655 kilos of CO2 a year through the reduction in demand for heat, which means net over the lifetime, which is allegedly 42 years, because that's when the insulation was invented, that you're looking at carbon negative to about 25 to 35 tonnes, which means the lifetime savings for the properties we've insulated under LADS and sustainable warmth competition is about 12.7 kilotons of CO2. It's a fantastic impact. We've sprayed and applied 2 football pitches worth of insulation in the projects we've been working out of the 3 bases using the fleet of robots. And in terms of what that saving looks like for the end user, £255 a year is an average saving. Over the lifetime of the material, probably £11,000 at current energy prices, or at expected energy inflation closer to £22,000 over its life. A gigawatt of energy saved on heating sources. So significant impact for the end user as a result of the funding stream, which is sometimes something we forget because we're all tied up in actually getting this work done and looking at the metrics. But hopefully that gives a bit of an oversight of the kind of work we've been doing, how it's impacted individuals both on a project level and within their homes. And so the learnings have all been, and just to echo everybody else's thoughts, engagement piece is imperative. Start early, do as much as you can. People will want to know about what's happening and what can happen in their home. And that initial engagement then needs to be followed up. We've seen some projects where there's been delayed decisions about funding extensions, about percentage distribution of EPC rating, which has put projects on hold, which means communication with end users finishes, and then actually re-engaging them was really challenging. So can't stress that enough. And not just with the end user, but also with the stakeholders. The stakeholders, everybody else involved, the retrofit coordinators, the retrofit assessors. It's hard work recruiting people, so get good data, and if you don't have it, find ways. Engage with organisations, do the kind of things that Agility Eco have been doing, look at how you can get better data. And then the successes will come, because you'll be able to do more in a shorter space of time and really see the benefits of economies of scale. So where it's worked best in projects, we've been able to do multiple installs on the same street in the same day, and that then really has a massive benefit to everybody. So thank you for your time, appreciate you coming. I think over to questions.
Thank you to everyone for their presentations. I think we can all agree there's a great amount of delivery and successes, some really poignant challenges and learnings as well that hopefully many of you, some from local authorities and probably from contractors, can take away and learn from as well. But there's a few key questions that I have for each of you from slightly different perspectives, from the local authority one, but also from the supply chain as well. And my first one would be, so for your organisation, so for the local authorities, my question to you is, what would you like to see from the market, so policy, or what would really be a step change for you to achieve greater impact? And then for the supply chain side of things, it's both. For you, what would you like to see to increase impact and growth for your businesses? And I'll start with Hannah, if that's all right, from a local authority perspective.
So I think one thing from local authority perspective is definitely the kind of funding side of things. So I think having that commitment around funding, long-term commitment, and also that flexibility in order to, I guess, spend the funding in a way which suits local authorities' delivery plans better. I think the way that different local authorities in different contexts are going to deliver stuff is going to be slightly different. So kind of need slightly different approaches rather than the competitive kind of one-size-fits-all programs. I'd say also another thing which probably links in with what the others are going to say is also that investment within the supply chain. I think what we've seen, particularly with stuff like Green Homes grants, where there's been this like influx funding but not that investment in the supply chain and support for things like PAS 2030, PAS 2035, like certification qualifications, it's just meant that it's been impossible really for anyone to deliver at the scale that they kind of would want to. So I'll pass over.
So there's probably a couple of things, but I've just written down a couple of points which I think it would be most important for us. So long-term commitment for funding. So again, echoing what you've said, also allows us and the installer network to confidently recruit and train, and also implementing the plan changes for MEES as well, and implementing the new SAP 10 would also very much help to make sure we're improving the way that EPCs work. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'll probably be mirroring some exact responses there, but it is the funding. It is also that flexibility at local level, I think would be really, really useful, because there is a one scheme fits all approach at the minute that clearly isn't working. So being able to be flexible with the funding to suit the needs of the individual area would be really beneficial.
And yeah, I can't disagree with the rest of the panel. We need to be able to invest in the supply chain. To do that, we need confidence. As you could see from that graph on one of my slides, very hard to have that confidence when the funding streams are erratic, when decisions around extensions are delayed. And so yes, long-term commitment so that we can invest to be able to satisfy everything that was being asked of us. So that will be the biggest change, and I can see the biggest impact from that, and hopefully we'll see that, because hopefully Bays have been listening, right? They've been listening?
Feels like some unanimous agreement there. I don't know if that reflects everybody else's experience in the audience, maybe from a local authority perspective in particular, looking for that consistent funding. Another theme which I've really picked up from everyone's presentation as well is about supply chain capacity, and I really just wanted to dig into that a little bit. I know we mentioned a bit about Agility Eco's initiatives to improve that, so just to give a chance for everyone to talk a little bit about the specifics of initiatives to invest in the supply chain, what you're doing with engagement, maybe a little bit about how you're funding that as well, to give some flavour for those in the audience for practically how to take that forward. So I'm going to start with Agility Eco.
So there's a couple of things. Obviously, there has been quite a lot of challenges with supply chain, and so it's definitely impacted our ability to meet that demand. And so we've also seen price increases as well. As a result, classic supply-demand issue, I know, but we've seen them a lot more. And obviously, we've got the cost caps for LAD and HUG, so that's made it really difficult to match the cost caps with the price increases that are coming from the installers. As we mentioned on our presentation, we're actively working with Alto Energy, using their MCS umbrella scheme as one of the ways to support installers. We're also working a lot with local installers, particularly those that aren't yet Trustmark registered, to help them obtain Trustmark, because obviously it's a key requirement for Eco, for LAD and for HUG, and a lot of the very smaller local companies might not have that yet. So for them it's really important to have that, so we've been helping them through the Trustmark process. So yeah, that's probably
So similarly, we've had a few contractors that we've been working with. Originally, we're largely doing kind of internal stuff like redecoration, changing like lighting, rewiring, that sort of thing. But as we've kind of increasingly merged out of our retrofit programme, we've been supporting a few of them to also get Trustmark PAS 2030 registration. So to help builds the capacity of those smaller contractors, helps upskill the supply chain, and also means that, we have that greater supply of contractors that will have those skills. And I think another thing is just building those skills in-house as much as possible as well, so we at least have that knowledge when we're working with different organisations.
So we're lucky enough to have the support from Agility Eco with what they are doing, but Portsmouth City Council has a real keen focus on supporting local installers and getting them to work on the schemes with us and upskilling them. That's our key approach.
And again, echoes much of the work that we're doing. So as a technology company, we're developing tools to make retrofit more achievable, more scalable, more consistent, and more compliant, and capture the data that goes with that. We operate our own delivery teams, but we have a bigger network of accredited install partners all around the country and in Europe. And we support those with a training scheme to get them to be able to operate the equipment effectively. And increasingly through procurement, we see a bigger drive from local authorities and others for social value. We want to put teams in local areas working with contractors in that region to generate jobs in the green environment, to bring younger people through to a slightly more technologically advanced type of construction. And so that program is there, and we have that kind of academy that we're building of training. So, very keen to continue to work with local installers across the globe, but specifically here in the UK, and expand that partner network. So for those of you that are delivering schemes like this, and you have high quality partners that you're working with, that are your little gems and your little secrets, is about sharing that knowledge with us, so that we can get them and help them expand and help them grow.
And final question for me to the panel. Many will be aware of the Energy Efficiency Task Force that's being set up, and the National Retrofit Hub that's currently being set up as well. And there's a lot of things they can focus on, because there's obviously system challenges. We've heard quite a few of them, but there's lots of other areas, different markets as well, particularly with the self-funded market as well, which we haven't even spoken about today. So my ask to the panel, if one thing, I know there's lots of things we can ask them to focus on, but those two groups which are currently setting up to help take that message to government and support the development of this retrofit industry, what one thing would you ask for them? And a little bit of an explanation why, and we'll just pass it along again.
I'm not going to go with the obvious one, which everyone can probably guess because we answered it for the first question. But the second one that came to mind was around, I think, just having kind of that resource to share lessons for where things either have or haven't worked for different authorities, because otherwise I think ultimately lots of different people, lots of different organisations are all trying quite similar things. And if you kind of know where it hasn't worked, what some of the key lessons are from that, then that can help just make the process a lot easier for everybody.
So we've already talked through quite a few of the points, which I've got a long list of things, probably some asks about what they could do. But I think one of the key things is around that training and development of the installer network. We work really hard to find the residents, engage them in the programme, get them interested in the measures, interested in the scheme, and then ultimately we have to make sure we have an installer at the end of it to actually install the measure. And if you're lacking in installers, then you're on the back foot in the first place. So the work we're trying to do to increase the availability of suitably qualified and accredited installers available in the area has been something that I would like the task force to work on. Hopefully that's one of the asks. But I've got many, so I won't go through them all.
What I would like to see from them is a cohesive and ambitious approach to retrofit. Not the current piecemeal bits of funding that we see at the moment. I want something more ambitious, but I want them to also look at learnings from schemes that have already been delivered and really understand what delivery looks like in the real world and apply that to policy, rather than look at a big ideal world picture, really understand how it actually delivers, and then shape policy to support that.
I echo all of those, and I think just to throw something completely different in, if we really want to drive retrofit at scale, it needs to sit outside of just priming the social market. We need to look at the able to pay, and the government needs to look at how we can incentivise that differently so that every person here and all of us can take really positive action to decarbonise, and that would drive the emphasis that's needed to have a bit more robust supply chain, which may drive the economies of scale that we all need to see to deliver more. So something along the lines of incentivising stamp duty based on the energy performance of a property, so that you can go and actually add real value to your home and then drive the individual out into the market to say, right, we want to do this, because then the market will react. And when the market reacts, then there will be enough capacity to meet all of the demand. So a bit off topic, but...
I think that's perfect. To summarise, I think what I've heard is a cohesive national retrofit strategy underpinned by policy and long-term funding, the development and the funding for supply chain development, and having that infrastructure to share knowledge. I think maybe many of us in the crowd can agree that's really what's needed to accelerate the retrofit industry and make sure it's not just in the grant schemes, but going way beyond that to get the self-funded and able-to-pay market going. That takes us to the end of this session. Sorry we didn't have time for questions from the audience, but please feel free to follow up from these brilliant practitioners from local authorities, contractors, and also those on the ground delivering installations. So I'd like everyone please join me to say thank you to the panellists and presenting today. Thank you very much.